No point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
All right, welcome to the Author Brand Show. The guest we have on today needs no introduction, so it's going to be a brief one because his resume is too long to reiterate. But I'll tell you this: once you meet the guy, and once you have even glimpsed at any of his dozens of books he's written, many of them New York Times bestsellers, you'll come away, as I do, as with our tagline here, is you're going to want to take notes. So without further ado, let me introduce my friend, John David Mann. John, how are you today?
I'm excellent. How are you, Doug?
Oh my gosh, just one after the other. After you're like a understated John Grisham here, or Stephen King or something.
I'm an evil dwarf living in the basement of some castle churning out.
Well, your books are much more interesting than in my opinion. Of course, that's just me. So, what I want to cover today with you, if you have a few minutes, which you do, because you agreed to do a podcast, is a couple of things. Our readers and our listeners and viewers all want to understand how you are able to weave such compelling prose, right? And I'm going to ask some very pointed questions about that. How do you tell a good story? And we talked briefly about that last time we were together. And then the other thing, which is really vital to every author, is how do I get the message out there? How do I actually promote this thing where I'm moving enough books to make a living out of it, or let alone recoup my investment? So those are two big things I want to cover. Of course, you're willing to chime in on anything you want to talk about, because I actually have no format on the show, but
I like that.
It's stuff that I'm interested in. So as I'm reading, I completely finished Steel Fear, your fiction novel, which you said there. Hold it up there because I have the audio only. There we go.
Here we go.
Steel Fear. There we go. Steel Fear. Great. And then we have the new one, Cold Fear. Right. And equally, very great, same character thing. We got the whole series working here, Mr. James Bond with the troubled soul Finn.
Correct.
So number one, folks, if you have any interest in being a better author, writer, nonfiction, fiction, does not matter. Read these books, because as you read them, you're like me, who you're picking apart the pacing and the style he puts in there to make you want to turn that page. And that's the thing that really captivates me, is how you put words together that makes me want to go, oh my gosh, I know this is like a hook or breadcrumb, but I don't care. I want to know what's going to happen. I don't skip ahead at the end because it's so deep. But the first question I have for you is this: when I read phrases like, the buildings looked like they were, stamped under LSD, describing this storefront here in Iceland. Yeah. Does that come out of your brain, or you have to look up analogies or things like that? Where does that come from?
Oh, that's a really interesting question, because it is a combination of things. I mean, to me, and you started out talking about how does he write this prose? Writers want to know how to write prose.
Yeah.
To me, there's kind of two steps or two stages in the process. Mm-hmm. And one of them is just generating the idea. Actually, maybe I should say there's three stages in the process, because part of it is just I read a bunch, I do a bunch of research. For example, You're talking about Iceland. You're talking about Reykjavik.
I'm going to get to that in a second. Yeah,
but so talking about the whatever it is, the scene that I'm describing. I am not a very visual person. I don't remember things that I see. My wife says, "Wasn't that great what we saw down the street?" And I'm like, "What did we see? I don't remember what we saw." So I can't visualize things well in my head as a natural capability. It's not one of my natural faculties. I'm auditory. So for me to describe a scene, it's work. I have to build it in my head, like building a stage set. So part of it is if I'm describing a given scene, whether it's an aircraft carrier or it's a town in America or it's Reykjavik, I go look at pictures of it. I go read about it. I go do research. So I just get input.
Okay.
Then when I'm going to actually do some writing, I'll sort of come up with ideas and get them on the page in rough draft form.
Right.
When I later go back to take this loose jumble that's like a draft of a chapter or a draft of a passage, where I know what I'm trying to say in there, and I know that it could be really crisp and sharp, but it's not yet. It's floppy and loose and goose. Then I work it. Okay. So I'll say, now, what is a better word for that? What is a better way of saying that? And sometimes, like you said, I actually do go look up metaphors or analogies.
I'll say Because all of mine are so trite, you know. Like,
I'll give you an example. I was trying to say, actually, I can't think of the example I was going to give you right now.
That's
But
right.
Common cliches, like, you know, that she was sharp as a tack, or you know, it was cold.
Yeah.
I'll put that down, and then I'll go look at it and say, that's a cliche. So I'll think about what's another way of saying that. Like, there's a character in Called Fear who's he says, you know, this is close, but what's the expression? Close only counts in horseshoes
And hand grenades.
and hand grenades.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that. I said so I said close isn't. I thought about it. I think I ended up saying close isn't good enough in hang gliding and homicides. And you know, it's just a throwaway line. And I'm sure people will read it and it'll stick in their head, or it won't, whatever. But I spent like half an hour on that, trying to think, well, how can I say?
Okay, good. I feel so much better because I'm reading this going, I'm like trying to take notes. That's a really good metaphor, right? Because I try to come up with like something that's rare on something I wrote the other day. I'm like, what's rare? You know, I'm like, you know, as you know, different things are so cliche and can't stand those. Right. And I found one. I probably ripped it off with somebody else. It was is about as popular as a butcher in India or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Those are fun.
Something fun and try not to be offensive. But
here's the passage you're thinking about, I think. Yeah. It was an eerie mix of odd and new, a mashup of Heidelberg or Prague or some other quaint European burg with a futuristic scene out of Final Fantasy. Rows of wooden corrugated iron houses brightly painted in pastels and primary colors, a medieval village on an LSD trip. That pretty much actually just rolled out of my head. Boom. Probably with a word or two changed. So sometimes it just kind of, when you got the thing visualized enough and you built it up enough, it just kind of rolls. Other times I have to go and I have to labor the point and think about what's a better word than this, or better phrase than that.
What you're saying is that you have experience with LSD then, really, to understand.
And medieval villages, yes.
Very brilliant. Okay. So that's interesting. That's good to know that sometimes it rolls out. Sometimes you got to research it. And that makes me feel better because I'm reading this stuff going, it's so colorful. It's as if the movie option isn't even necessary.
Right.
Joking.
That's the plan.
I know. So the other question on the content is, oh my God, have you been to Iceland? Oh my gosh.
Nope.
So folks, when you read this book, and you will read Cold Fear, he's got the dialect, the attitude, the energy, the Viking reference, the geography, the tectonic plates. He's got everything imaginable about this country. You feel like you are there. I mean, I can't imagine you writing this book and getting the language properly done. I mean, how did that happen?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. You do this for a novel. I do it too, to a far lesser extent, for a parable like The Go-Giver or Latte Factor or whatever. Because in the parables, there's very little detail. It's only dabs of color here and there. But I do research those dabs of color. But for a novel, you know, you want to make it so full of detail. Yeah. So, you know, part of the characteristic of the Finn series that I'm working on, first book, Steel Fear, is set on an aircraft carrier. Mm-hmm. One of the most alien, bizarre environments that you or I could ever imagine. Right. Yeah. Most people have no idea what it's like. And so my job was to describe it so accurately that a person who's a Navy personnel who's been on a ship will go, yeah, he's got that right. Yeah. And someone like you or I who's never been on it, I don't know if you have or not, I don't remember.
Just on the tour here in Charleston, they've got
there you go.
The tour you can do it, you know.
Yeah. So somebody like someone normal like us will look at it and say, God, I'm there. I feel it. I get it. I get what it's like. So same thing with Iceland. Yeah. I needed to research it like crazy.
Yeah.
And one of the things I did was I found the premier Icelandic fiction author, is a guy who writes a series of crime novels that I just started to read purely for background. I fell in love with him. Guy's name is Arnaldur Indridason, and he writes these novels about this kind of somber, depressed detective airlander. And I read the whole series. I fell in love with these books. They're amazing. And I just absorbed sort of Icelandic culture and ethos and spirit from him. And through a friend of a friend of a friend, I got hold of somebody who was willing to be my Icelandic consultant. And she and I pen palled back and forth. Like, I did a ton of research so I could capture it. But that to me is part of the joy of, I have a friend, Dan Burris. I don't know if you know Dan Burris or not. So Dan is a phenomenal public speaker. He is a futurist. He consults to corporations and governments and all kinds of things.
Okay.
And one of his toolkits is he'll go give a talk to whatever industry. He'll give a talk to plumbers. He'll go give a talk to NASA scientists, whatever. And he talks about his principles of future forecasting completely in their language. Like he'll talk about the problems that plumbers face or the problems that NASA scientists face. He does the research ahead of time. So when he walks in and starts talking, they're like, this guy's talking to us.
Our guy, yeah.
That's our job as a public speaker. That's my job as a novelist. Learn my environment. So it's part of the fun for me of the Finn books is take a weird alien environment, bring it to life.
Yeah. It was as though you were there. I mean, I'm serious.
Yeah.
I haven't been to Iceland, but we had a foreign exchange student live with us from Iceland. So I know, probably 1% more than the average person, but not that much more. Amazing. Again, when I think about the research involved with everything, plus the writing skill and editing, how long does it take you to write a novel like this?
So the first one, Steel Fear, I was not only writing it, but also kind of learning how to write a novel. It took me, I'd say 2 years. To put that together. Right. Cold Fear, second one, a year, because the learning curve, I had a learning curve behind me already. So, and now right now I'm working on book 3, which you won't see till next summer. And I've got like 9 months to write that one. So it's getting shorter, but I think it takes a year or close to a year to let the story settle in. And I don't write quickly, or let me say that differently. When I'm in the later stages, I write like a demon, like a rocket ship. But in the early stages, the story conceiving process, I am slow as I'm going to say snail. If I were going to write that in a book, I would find a different way of saying it.
Metaphor. Slow as a government grant application, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
So that's very interesting because I'm thinking about all the research you have to do and also it takes time. Yeah. And in your case, you're blessed, fortunate, whatever, because you don't have to have another job. This is your job as a writer, right? I mean, you don't.
My job.
Work something else. So, but people who are have to put the lights on with somebody else while they're building their writing career. Yeah, it could take them longer. It could take them a couple of years to do this part time.
Easily. So 2 things to say to that. One is that even though this is what I do, while I was in the middle of writing Cold Fear, I wrote two other books. While I was in the middle of writing, Go Give Her Marriage, and then I wrote a book about writing, and I wrote another parable, which isn't going to be published till next year. So while I'm working on the novel, I'll take a break for 2, 3, 4 weeks, and take my mind off it, work on some other project, and meanwhile the novel is kind of fermenting in the backwoods of the brain. And I switch gears like that, and I find that it is like going to my day job. In fact, it is going to my day job. One of the great challenges of writing Steel Fear was we had no income to write Steel Fear, so I had to have other stuff going on.
Yeah. Okay.
The second thing to say is that I forgot what the second thing was, so we'll come back to it.
Come back to it. You didn't get an advance from your publisher on Steel Fear? That was
Steel Fear. No, Steel Fear. We didn't have a publisher. Steel Fear we wrote totally on spec. Wow. So Brandon and I wrote the book. We had to write the book, perfect it. Hone it down under our agent's guidance from 150,000 words to 100,000. It took 2 years in total to get that done without seeing a penny, completely in the red on that. That was like an investment in building a company where you have, your pockets are the investment. You have no investors and you have no income. That's what Steel Fear was. When we finally sold it to a publisher after we'd written it, then yes, we got an advance.
Nice. Okay.
So.
That's a really good model for people to remember. Yeah. So forgive me for saying you weren't full time. You had your day job was writing your parables and other things you do while you worked on your novel. On
my sweetheart. Yes. On my baby project. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Good to know. So that brings you to the big question a lot of authors need help with is, man, how do you make money as this? How do you promote this thing? How do you market it? As so much to say here, we could make a whole, theory, but give me some pointers. Have you always worked with a publisher?
Mostly,
right?
almost always.
But even still, they still require you to do a lot of your own marketing stuff. So just give us some overviews on that process and what's the best practices might be.
It is a truism to say it's hard to make money as a writer. It's even more of a truism to say you don't make money as a writer. I don't believe that latter is true, but I understand why people say it. It is tough to do. It is tough to generate an income purely as a writer, particularly if a writer of published books.
Let's just preface that as a fiction writer.
Yes,
it's insanely difficult.
Yes,
nonfiction people can make money with their book. If they only sell 1,000 copies, they can consult on it and do very well.
You can use it as a part of a larger business plan.
Right,
exactly, part of a larger strategy. For a fiction author, your larger strategy is go on book tours that don't pay you a penny. In fact, you pay out. So the book has got. So one thing that people who aren't published authors really, really need to understand, which is your publisher is not going to sell the book for you. Your publisher is not going to market the book for you. I don't care who you are. You will find situations where the publisher will do some marketing for you, and that's wonderful. Our publisher is Bantam. And Bantam does a fantastic job putting together. We got a great trailer, which I'm going to be launching on Twitter later today.
Good.
It's like a Hollywood quality trailer. Nice. It's awesome. They get certain appearances for us on podcasts and videos and interviews and this and that and that. None of it amounts to a whole lot, even in the best of circumstances. It's mostly on you. It's whether you're self-published or your publisher published. It's mostly on you. So how do you market? How do you market the book? There's two kinds of people.
Go back to Steel Fear, because that was was on a spec, right? That was the first one.
Correct.
And and the publisher picked it up right away, or you still had to sell it? Was that Bantam also?
Yes, once the agent gave her ex ante nod and judged it to be ready for shopping.
Right.
We took it out to a handful of publishers, and several of them said, "We're interested." One of them said, "We want this." And the way that I knew this was the right publishers, we got on a phone call with every one of the publishers who was interested. We got on a phone call with Bantam, and the editor-in-chief of the company was on the phone saying, "Is this the brilliant John David Mann?" And nice. I like these people.
Yeah. Stroke my ego. We're going to get along great.
Well, they like the book. When they like the book, it means something. And by the way, you don't always, if you have multiple publishers bidding on a book, you don't necessarily always go with the publisher who gives you the highest number.
That's right.
You go with the publisher who has the greatest passion for the book. This matters. It's not just a spiritual thing. It's a commercial thing. You want the publisher who has the most outspoken, obvious, discernible passion for your book, because they are going to turn around and they're going to infuse that passion into the marketing team and the sales team and the distribution team. It's going to translate to Barnes and Noble managers. It's going to translate out to airport bookstores if they go there. They're going to put the word out to the publishing industry in a way that helps lay a foundation for the book. So one thing, for example, a publisher will do is it'll try to sell your book to Publishers Weekly, to Library Journal, to Kirkus Reviews, to the various journals that do little in-industry reviews of your books. So if you go on Amazon, you look at a book and you see it has Kirkus Reviews says this, Publishers Weekly says that. That's meaningful to booksellers even more than to retail buyers. So they do help you give a leg up.
Yeah.
Even that said, it's mostly up to you. You have to build your readership. Build your readership like you build an audience.
Yep.
So how do you do that?
That's the next question. Now, you've been around for more than a couple of years, and this is not your first rodeo. So, if a person is starting out, you can go. I mean, when you started out, things were different, I'm sure, than they are now in terms of the ecosystem. So, try to transpose where you were when you were first starting out and the publishing world today. What would be some best practices you could tell someone to do to get themselves out there?
Yeah, there were things that worked really well, back in the late 90s and early 2000s that are irrelevant today. But so it is a little bit different for nonfiction and fiction. For example, something that I think really works well with nonfiction. We'll talk about that for a minute. That's been the majority of what I've done. When you do the kind of campaign where you make a pre-order offer, let's say you're writing a book about how to be a public speaker, and so you have the book ready, and then you have a special pre-order special where if they pre-order the book through your website, then they also get these 3 things or these 5 things. One of them might be pieces of the book that you left out, you didn't put in, deleted scenes, so to speak. They might get a special conference call with you about how to be a public speaker. They might get special videos. Find things that would be of genuine value to the people who are interested in reading your book, offer those as a premium, and try to cultivate that cadre of early readers. Not only because you want big sales numbers in your first week out of the gate, that's important, but also because you want early readers who are your walking megaphones, who are out there in the world saying to people, you got to read this book.
Right.
So I like to give away the book before publishing, if possible. I like to get like 50, 100 people, get a free pre-release advanced copy of the book. It could be digital, it could be PDF, it could be Kindle, whatever it is. That is a huge strategy. I don't think it's such a big strategy for fiction. We tried it with Steal Fear, and the stuff that works really well with my nonfiction books didn't work so well with Steal Fear.
Is it because it's longer? Is it more, takes more time to digest the fiction books?
No, it's because because I think the nonfiction readers are looking to your book to kind of learn how to do something or learn how to understand something.
Right.
The fiction readers aren't looking for that. They're looking for just an unbelievably gripping story.
Right.
And so, yeah, you can give them behind the scenes stuff. We gave them deleted chapters in Steal Fear that, that weren't actually in the book. And I thought they were pretty cool. People didn't care that much. They wanted to get to read the book.
Yeah.
So in any case, there are things that work differently in nonfiction and fiction. But the bottom line is the number one strategy. It used to be you could spend a whole bunch of dollars on a publicist and that would be effective.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was effective. Often
sometimes
it wasn't.
it works.
Mostly it didn't, but sometimes it did. Now it hardly works at all. The number one strategy for creating a readership for your book is developing that core of devoted readers. It could be 50 people. It could be 100 people. Whatever. It doesn't matter how small it is.
Right.
Here, the quality matters. You develop an audience of people who are ready for your book, who are anticipating your book, who are already telling their friends and neighbors and family about your book because they love what you do. And you can do that by, by developing a blog, by developing a podcast, whatever you do to get your message out there or get examples of what you do out there. Develop that before the book's out. Develop that mailing list. And even in this day of social media, the email list is still valuable. I'm discouraged when I send out an email and I see how many people don't open it. Don't look at those numbers, Sean. Don't look at those numbers. I know. Even so, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it because that email list is gold. Every published writer who knows anything about what he or she is doing will tell you that your email list is your golden egg, golden goose.
That is unchanged. If you think about any other industry, right? Whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or Apple. I mean, they all build their audience out of providing value naturally, but also it's that
evangelist
community aspect, man. I'm an Apple guy, this is what I have, this is what I like. I'm not going to look at, MS-DOS or whatever.
I think it was Apple who really brought the term evangelist into the industrial.
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah.
So Apple evangelist. I'm still a Mac evangelist.
Yeah. Me too. I saw a hilarious meme years ago that I can't, I'll have to describe it. It's two pictures. One guy, it says, Windows people love their computer. This guy got hugging his computer and had an Apple book. And it's this guy humping his Macintosh saying, but Apple users make love to the computer.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay, that's a pretty good differentiator. It. Yeah. It's
pretty much it. I got my first Mac in 1986. And
wow.
It was a Mac Plus, 512K, man.
I got the 2SI was my first one, I think.
Oh, yeah, I had one of those. 2SI. Yeah. A little bigger. Lugged it around a lot.
Still is. My phone is 10 times or 100 times faster. It's crazy how fast things go.
But building that core readership
audience, right? That's it. And we have a bunch of people in our space talking about that. I mean, it's the first 1,000 readers, the first 1,000 books. You got to build that audience. Without that, you're just pissing in the wind.
The second thing,
you found it.
The second thing maybe should come first. The second thing about how do you get your book out there, it has to do with the book, which is the concept of the book. You before you write your book or before you finish your book, you got to make sure that your concept is golden, is going to ring like a bell that can be heard for 10 miles around.
Yeah.
By title, by the cover, by the one sentence description, by the paragraph on Amazon. And it's really easy to ring a false note and have it affect. And I'll give you an example of that. Steal Fear made a big splash when it came out. It got fantastic reviews. We had some, amazing people like Lee Child and Brad Thor and so forth. And this, just nominated for a Barry Award.
Nice.
Hey, and stuff like that. However, sales of Steal Fear were hurt in one way by a slight marketing miscue on all of our parts. We all missed it, which was Steal Fear was perceived by the marketplace as a military book, a military thriller. You got an aircraft carrier, you got a helicopter on the open sea,
Steel
and
fear,
boom,
front,
steel
yeah.
fear, boom. It's a military thriller. If you look through all the reader comments on Amazon, you'll see dozens of them. People say things like, I'm not usually a fan of military books, military adventures, but I really enjoyed this one. The truth is,
Yeah, because
it's not a military book.
No,
it's not. It's a thriller. It's a flat out thriller. And
that
Cold Fear,
happens on an aircraft carrier.
Cold Fear, the sequel that's coming out now, has got no military anything. It's got you know, Finn, the Navy SEALs in it, but it's totally domestic, totally civilian. But what happened was we told the marketplace this is a military book. So military people, military enthusiasts picked it up and read it, at least some of them. All of the non-military, just straight thriller, crime, mystery enthusiasts, probably the majority of them didn't notice it because it didn't ring their bell. And they would have loved it if they'd picked it up, as these dozens of reviews attest. So we had a slight false note in the marketing message, and that resulted in missing thousands and thousands and thousands of readers who would love the book if they only knew about it, if the message had spoken to them properly. So you got to be really careful what the book's concept is and what the message is that you're putting out there.
Just dramatic pause now. That's gold. That is number one.
Yeah.
We at our company, when we ghostwrite books for, you know, for executive CEOs, whatnot, and we spend a whole month on doing what we call vet and validate, where we test book covers, we test titles with an audience, we do focus groups.
Good
we even have
you,
my staff goes in and looks at, they go to the category of an Amazon, they'll pull 100 3-star reviews to find out what people are saying. Hey, I like this, but, or this is cool, but. So we get data for our clients. Say, hey.
Oh, that's really smart. Hey, I want to do my mic drop right now for you and say, notice, folks, he doesn't go for 1-star reviews. He doesn't go for 5-star reviews. He goes for 3-star reviews. That's where the valuable information is. Good thinking. That's really cool.
I stole that from somebody else, by the way, to be completely a friend of mine.
I'm going to steal it from whoever you stole it from you, because I had never thought of that. And that's brilliant. That's really brilliant.
Only quote me once. And the line I use when I'm talking to my clients is, well, we ignore the 5-star, we ignore the 1-star reviews. That's somebody's just ticked off. Right. And ignore 5-star reviews. That's just somebody's mom. But a 3-star review is constructive criticism. They've actually read it and they've got something useful to say. Otherwise, they wouldn't bother, right? So it's awesome. It's valuable. So yeah, that's what we do for we do 100% nonfiction stuff. But in the fiction world, man, it's tough. I had one gal who I think you'll preach this from, because you do both nonfiction and fiction. But she had it's my show. I can say what I want. She had an Amazon store which sold adult toys, right? Yeah. And she was doing about $250,000 a year in this thing, doing bang up business before Amazon said, we're not doing that anymore.
I'll pretend you didn't just say bang up business, but go ahead.
And they just one day said, no, we're not going to let you sell this anymore. And she's done out. Like, my business is gone. And she calls it, want to do a book. You do an erotic novel? They'll sell like hotcakes. Go ahead, do it. Yeah, they're hard to make money. I'm like, yeah, but why don't we do this? Since you've got this inventory of stuff, you got these great ideas and stories, why not do like sponsored links inside your book and describe this blah, 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 blah. And then, by the way, that's a hyperlink to your private store. So it's entertainment content, toys. I don't know what you want to call it.
Yeah, I like that.
Product placement. You know, it's instead of being a branded, you actually have a link. So it was my idea to help her out. I don't know if she did or not, but I thought it was fun.
I'm going to pretend you just didn't say product placement, but anyway, go ahead.
You know, that's another thing you can do. You can turn any phrase into something naughty if you just say it in a certain way. Any phrase.
That's right.
Like I had one friend say, "Yeah, try to make this phrase naughty. I'll rotate your tires," and he said, "I'll rotate your tires."
It's like the surgeon on
Scrubs. It's a matter of how you say things.
Yeah, exactly.
So back on track for our no kids are watching this. Yes. So yeah, I love that. Make sure you're targeting your audience precisely. And that you said that was your first thriller mystery. That book, Steel Fear, was your first one.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
First one.
And then what can you tell us about the potential for the I know you mentioned last time we spoke about a potential movie option, maybe. Yeah, it's actually it's you know, there's a phrase they have in Hollywood called in development. Yeah. And what in development means is, you know, you think about it this way: when you want to write a book and you start start to do the dance with publishers. Yeah. You might be talking to a couple of publishers, right? Right. But basically, they're talking about publishing your book.
Who's involved? The writer. You write the book. They have a marketing department. They market it. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
When you talk about making a TV show, which is what we're talking about,
Yeah.
you're not talking about making a show. You're talking about starting a whole new business.
Right.
If you put on, Breaking Bad, or you put on, whatever the TV show is,
Yeah.
it isn't just the production of a show.
No.
It's the building of an entire new business, because you have hundreds and hundreds of people on payroll, millions of dollars in investment going on. So, I think that's the reason that it takes so long and is such an arduous path to turn something as simple as a book into something as complex as that's what we're in right now. We're in development. So the Steel Fear of the Finn series, called the Finn X series, is in development as a streaming TV series. I can't say with whom yet, but as soon as I can say it, I will.
As soon as you can say it, you'll let us know when it's gonna, it's into production versus out of development into production, right?
As soon as it goes from in development to in pre-production.
Pre-production, excuse me. Yeah.
Then
well, even then, that's do they give you any idea of what they're gonna do? How many episodes they would do if they go that far?
Don't know.
Okay.
This time it's all in development.
That's right. Yeah. I have some friends in the industry. I know some of the jargon. It's not easy to do, but
no, it's murderous.
But I think it's worthy to note, and this is based on our previous conversation, that was your original intention, was to be a Hollywood guy, screenwriter, right?
It was, yeah. In fact, when Bob Berg approached me about writing The Go-Giver,
that's right.
That was my deal. That was what I was spending as much as my full time as I could in my spare time, is I wanted to become an A-list Hollywood screenwriter. That was my plan. And it got totally derailed by this book thing, which seems to have worked out in my favor. But I had my eyes set on that.
I'm bringing it up because it's coming full circle, my friend.
Hey, Brandon and I had conceived of this as a series, either a streaming TV series, in which every season is a book, or every book becomes a season.
Sure. Yeah.
Or a series of feature films, every book becoming one of the films. So yeah, the next Jason Bourne. That's the plan.
That's right. Yes. Although I don't know. I mean, Jason Bourne is more likable than Finn. Finn is. I mean, he doesn't say much in the first book. He's pretty quiet.
Second book, interesting. So the first book, you probably remember my saying that Steel Fear is a leadership parable disguised as a crime novel.
Okay.
In some ways, Steel Fear is really about leadership, good, bad, and the ugly. Cold Fear is about friendship.
Okay.
About friendship and betrayal.
I'm not far enough into it. I haven't finished it yet, but I'll finish it up this next week or so.
It's a very personal book to Finn, and it has a lot to do with him looking for not only the missing pieces in his past, but the missing pieces in himself.
Oh, good.
And this is a journey that's going to go well beyond the confines of 2 books. It may take us 5, 6, 7 books.
Good, because I felt bad for him in the first one. I felt. I mean, he did. He was
he had a tough road there.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm not gonna tell anymore, but yeah, it's a great book, great series, obviously coming out. So I'll finish up the second one, and I'll buy the pre-sale on the third one when it's ready. When will that be ready?
Third one will probably come out. It doesn't have a defined pub date now, but probably around this one, Cold Fear, comes out June 7.
Okay.
The next one will probably come out a year later in June, first week of June, second week of June.
Great. And then you've got you and your wife just came out with Go-Giver Marriage, which my fiance both have copies of. We haven't finished yet, but when we get finished it, we'll have pictures of us reading it for you guys. How's that doing?
It's doing really, really well. I think we've had a more. I was mentioning this to you before you pressed record, that we just passed the 100 mark in terms of 100 podcasts and interviews around Go-Giver Marriage. So we've been really busy with that.
Nice.
I think we've had a more enthusiastic outpouring of support and engagement from our community of friends and colleagues and associates and so on around the Go-Giver Marriage than any book I've ever seen. It's been phenomenal.
Wow.
We had such a beautiful, huge reception. Among ways. So it's doing great.
That's great. Good to hear it. Any last words of advice for our budding authors and entrepreneurs out there, Mr. Mann?
Yeah, totally. There's the thing of your message and what you want to say and your ideas and coming up with stuff. And I think it's really important to go into it with an understanding that when you first put something, especially about writing a book, something as substantial as that, when you first put stuff on paper, don't worry about whether it's any good or not. because it won't be. I promise you, it won't be that great. It won't be as good as you think, and you might not even think it's that good. That's okay. As long as you're true to yourself, true to your idea, true to your intention, and just start getting it on paper, then you come back to it later. Whether it's a day later or a week later or a month later, you come back to it and take your ideas, the raw ore, and start to refine it into polished steel. They're two totally different skill sets, generating content and refining the content to make it really good. I love the refining part. That's where you can get better and better and better, but you can learn these skills so that you can take something that's kind of mediocre on the page and you can make it sing.
Right.
This is a totally different skill set, your imagination, your intention. So don't try to do them both at once. Give them each their separate time.
I've heard that advice over and over again. People edit as they write, and I say it's going to take you forever and it'll never come out. So just data dump and come back to it and keep massaging it, polishing it. You're absolutely spot on with that. Yeah, it's hard to do with deadlines, but you can set your own proper deadlines, I think, or hire a good editor. Developmental editor also helps.
Yeah,
right?
yes.
Need it.
Steel Fear wouldn't exist without that story consultant that I first hired. I spent $1,200 out of my pocket before we even went to an agent. Wow. To say, can you help me make this manuscript better? And she helped enormously. So yes, professional help for writers is a very, very useful thing. I wouldn't be here without it.
Terrific. John, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Folks, this is John David Mann, best-selling author of Steel Fear, and now Cold Fear is coming out. Make sure you get a copy. It'll be available on June 7th. Hold that book up one more time. There you go, right in front of your, there we go. Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. And folks, don't forget to subscribe. There's some show notes here for you to get and some goodies for us. That's it for today. Thank you so much. We'll see you later.